The footage of the president unable to recall simple facts must have been brutal to watch.
James Webb.
I don't remember the names. I don't remember the name. I don't remember ever buying something for myself.
Did you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
I mean, I don't remember that. Okay, as good as my memory is, I don't remember that. But I have a good memory.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best memories?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry, that was the wrong footage. That's the high-functioning candidate from 9 years ago, unable to recall if he has a good memory.
Yeah, it's John Heilemann. We've seen examples over and over again of Donald Trump just losing it on stage here. And you had the whole political world come to a stop. First of all, because for some reason you had the guy, the special counsel, asking, "Hey, what year did your son die?" And supposedly he didn't remember what year his son died. And this was the most damning thing. I said this yesterday, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just older people. We've lived a busy and active life, but nobody's closer to me. Nobody's been closer to me in my life than my mom. If somebody asked me in the middle of a deposition, what year did your mom die? I go, I don't know, 2017, 2018, 2019. I don't know. I can tell you everything about it. I can tell you my final word. But again, that, and same thing with Mika and her dad. So the fact, first of all, that he was asking that question. Secondly, that somehow that's the most damning thing, and the Trump people are now saying the White House is like an old folks' home. They need to look inside their own glass house, because inside that glass house, if the Biden administration or the Biden White House and the political team know what they're doing, that's a glass house, the Trump glass house, that's going to come crashing to the ground, because there's clip after clip after clip of this guy not even remembering, the most basic things.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, look, earlier Willie made some comment about how Donald Trump doesn't know what day it is, and I was like, yo, simmer down over there. Like, a lot of us here have a problem with what day it is, what day of the week, and I can sort of remember maybe that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, but even that's fading fast for me. The fairest thing to say about this, Joe, and this is, of course, our politics, so nothing will be fair about this, but both of these candidates are over the optimal age at which we would want a president to be. They are. And if we could rule this race by rationality, if we're going to say we're going to have Donald Trump and we're going to have Joe Biden, the two of them we should acknowledge the fact that they are, as the special counsel unfairly said, Biden kind of took a shot at him when he wrote it, but elderly gentlemen. They're elderly gentlemen. They're going to be, one of them's an octogenarian already, the other's going to be an octogenarian shortly, and they're not going to have the best memories. We're joking about it here, but the truth is, you and I don't have the best memories. Willie, right. Willie's memories even worse than ours. Last time I checked, Lemire remembers things most of the time. I won't speak for Michael Steele, but we're all, right. We're all imperfect. And the reality is, if we're going to have battles of videotape between these candidates, kind of pointing out that each one is not it has lost a few miles an hour off their fastball from when they were at their best, that's a battle that Joe Biden ultimately is in a reasonable place to win, because they have a lot of those same failings. But what Joe Biden doesn't have is propensity to lie pathologically about everything in the world, nor does Joe Biden have a propensity to say the kind of things that Donald Trump was saying on Saturday, where he threatens to have Vladimir Putin attack NATO allies and encourages them, et cetera, all the democracy-breaking things that Trump did. Right. So if you want to play the game on that battlefield, I would say Biden isn't as good a place as any place to take Trump on.
But I'll tell you what else is. You're looking at those two pictures, Michael. Still, another big difference. One of those people actually know foreign policy. One of those people have no idea. One of those people have spent the past 50 years getting to know every leader across the world. The other guy just goes around blowing things up, and people may go, "Hey, that's cool." No, it's not really cool. We have spent the past 75 years creating the American century. There's a reason why over 75 years, America is stronger now than it's ever been militarily, why our economy is the strongest in the world, on and on. But you talk to both of those guys over an hour, both of those guys may forget a word, may forget, may stumble around. The difference, though, between those two people when it comes to memory, knowledge, and their mental capacity is one of them doesn't know policy. One of them just blows things up and goes out ranting and plays Fat Elvis on stage because that's all he can do. You can't talk policy. Joe Biden, I've done it. You can sit down with him for an hour and you can go around the world and ask tough questions around the world about what's going on. And not only does he keep up, he knows more about it than any senator on Capitol Hill. He knows the ins, the outs. He knows the players. And yeah, he doesn't talk to you like a 40-year-old woman or a 40-year-old man would talk to you. He talks to you like a guy who has been around a very long time and knows this stuff better than anybody else. And a good parallel is Warren Buffett, who has been around a long time, and people still, they hang on every word because, well, they'd like to get rich like Warren Buffett, who's still active and who's still investing. That's the difference between these two. And I will say it, I've said it before, I'll say it again. With Biden, it's presentation. It's you know, and the question is, why was he allowed to talk for 5 hours the day after the Hamas terrorist attack for 5 hours? It didn't serve him well. It didn't serve the White House well, and I'd even say it didn't serve the investigation well.
So there's a number of things to unpack there, Joe. I'll start with our friend John's point about we've passed the optimal point for having someone at this age as president. I don't know. This is the first time we've been here. I mean, we didn't seem to have too much of a problem with Reagan as an older presidential candidate and president. So I think there are a number of variables that go into that. So I think we're now discovering for the first time what that limit may be. So having said that, here's where we are. So can we get over all the noise around how old these two men, because that's not changing between now and November. They're getting older, not younger. So let's live with what we got. Voters had a choice. They had a choice when both of these men stood on the stage at their respective times running for president, and they were chosen by primary voters. So let's get over that. To the point about how these individuals are performing, you are spot on, and you are making the most critical point that the Democrats continue to fail to make about their own candidate. And that is, don't worry about whether or not he remembered something that happened 30 years ago. Listen to what he's telling you today. Listen to how he's talking about and framing the arguments for this hour as we're confronting an explosion in Europe because our Republican Senate and House members want to light the fuse for Putin. Listen to how he's talking about helping the nation recover from COVID, from a downturn in the economy, from a loss of hope in jobs and opportunities. Listen to how he's trying to move the nation off of the authoritarian, anti-democratic behavior of the other party. And so you do have some very clear contrasts.
Hey, Michael.
And as you said, yeah, go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
Look in their bank account. Why don't they do that too? For all these rich people that are bitching about how he's a socialist, and I heard another story about it last night. People around the table, this guy that's got millions and millions of dollars, all he's doing is bitching about, oh, Biden's a socialist. He's surrounded by socialists. And because he's a really wealthy guy, nobody at the dinner table was saying anything to him. And then a woman I know was telling me about how she said, hey, wait a second. How's Biden a socialist? Well, he's just name one policy. Well, name one person in his administration. Well, I just know he is. He must just know he is because he listens to certain shows on Fox News or Fox Business or Newsmax or something like that. That's the thing, Michael, that Willie and I talk about all the time.
Yep.
You want to know how Biden's doing? Look at your 401k. And if you're one of these rich country club types that drive your Ferrari or your Maserati to your country club and bitch about how horrible the economy is, look at your stock app and see how much money you're making every hour, because there's not a crazy lunatic in the White House. There's somebody who actually respects the rule of law. There's actually somebody who respects American democracy. And yes, there's actually somebody that respects American capitalism and what keeps it stable. But these freaks, I'm not exactly sure what they think they're going to get from Donald Trump, but they're going to get none of that. So just look right in front of you right now when trying to figure out, Michael, whether he's up to the job or not. Your 401k suggests he is.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it is that type of evidence that it still puzzles me that people blow past to score the point against Joe Biden on his age. And so the reality to the next part of this was the point you made about putting him in situations that do not help that narrative, that in fact enhance the anti-Biden narrative that Republicans are going to run with. I don't understand still to this moment, the political operation that allows some of the things that have happened with Joe Biden to happen, that do not take advantage of the very things that you're just talking about. You sit the president down when Taylor Swift is the it girl for the Super Bowl, and you have not just a recognized, but a highly recognized sizable uptick of young voters, particularly women, tuning in to watch this Super Bowl because of her. That's a political opportunity to have a conversation with those voters. So you tell the president, we're going to put you in the cardigan, or we're going to put you in something. We're going to have you looking real cool and sit you down and have a conversation. I don't understand why they're so tone deaf to those moments, Joe. And you know, John, you know.
Well, not only what he's talking about, but again, the geopolitical implications of the Republican Party completely folding on a security structure that created the American century following World War II, that created the strongest economy in the history of the world, that created the strongest military force in the history of the world. And here we are all these years later. I know Trump, Republicans like to trash the country. They do. Extreme MAGA. They fly their flags upside down, talk about how horrible things are, they insult our men and women in uniform, and talk about how weak and woke the United States military is, despite the fact our military is stronger relative to the rest of the world than it has been since 1945. And yet the attacks keep coming. And they call Joe Biden a socialist. He's a Marxist. They're such idiots. He's a communist. Well, baby, if this is how communism works for the stock market, there are a lot of billionaires. There are a lot of millionaires who are voting for Donald Trump, calling Joe Biden a socialist, that are making millions of dollars every single day. Because the stock market is soaring. The economy is doing better than ever before. Our jobs numbers are better than they've ever been. They're better than anywhere else in the world. Our inflation numbers, more inflation numbers come out today. We're doing better, tamping down inflation post-COVID than any major industrial power in the world. We are pounding China's economy. They get so sick and tired. I said it on this air starting in 2007. People would come on whining about, oh, China's going to overtake us. America's so weak. Bullshit. I'm so tired of people trashing America. I'm so tired of it. I've heard it my entire life. I heard it in the late 1980s. It was Japan that was going to take America over, that was going to turn America into Japan's granary. Because we were behind on computer chips. And then Intel said, hold my beer. And we crushed them. We crushed them economically. Japan, an ally, but Japan, who was going to turn America into its granary, according to a member of its parliament, they went into a lost decade. America's economy grew. It's continued to grow. We heard the same thing about China. Our economy is crushing China's economy right now. Did you know that? And California, which is supposed to be such a basket case, fourth largest GDP in the world. In the world. Russia, which we got Republicans saying they want our military to be more like, they have collapsed. They've been destroyed. This Ukraine war has set them back 20 years militarily. They've got a GDP now smaller than the size of Texas. And yet the whining continues. The hatred for America continues from the extreme MAGA Trumpers. Why? Why do they hate America? Why? Why do they fly their flags upside down? Biden is socialist? Oh, don't tell traders on Wall Street that. Don't tell industrial nations across the world who look at our numbers and say, how are they doing that? How is America? How does America continue to thrive even in the hardest of times? There are entire news networks that are dedicated to spreading the lie that America is weak, dedicated to spreading the lie that the United States military is not the strongest in the world. Those are lies. Militarily, we're more powerful than we've been since World War II. Economically, we're more powerful than all of our allies and enemies. Culturally, that soft power thing that makes such a difference, never been bigger, never been stronger in the world than we are right now. And yet one sick, diseased man who so desperately wants to get into the White House that he admits that he wants the economy to crash. And he says, let's keep the southern border in chaos for another year. And says you can blame me. Okay, Donald, I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you. Because we had a solution for the southern border. You said no. You said no. We want the fentanyl. Donald Trump says keep the fentanyl flooding in. Keep the fentanyl flooding in for another year. Keep the illegal immigrants flooding in for another year. Keep the humanitarian crisis growing for another year and making the lives of people who live on the border hell, a living hell. Oh, and by the way, Donald Trump tells our Border Patrol, the men and women who put their lives on the line every day, and really are fighting an unwinnable battle right now because they're not getting the resources they need from politicians in Washington, D.C. They beg Republicans to pass this bill. Republicans, what do they tell them? Drop dead. Because they want chaos on the southern border. They want fentanyl flooding in across the southern border. They want illegal immigrants flooding in across the southern border. They don't want the problem fixed. There's nothing patriotic about that. That's sick. I've got to say, I served in Congress long enough to be able to say this. This group of extreme House MAGA Republicans are the most unpatriotic I have seen in a long, long time. I say that as a small government conservative. And you know, Donald Trump, why did Donald Trump, think about this, why did Donald Trump say this outrageous thing about NATO and about Putin during a news cycle, the worst news cycle of the Biden White House's time, like over the past 3 years? Why did he do that? Well, he wanted to change the conversation to that. Because Donald Trump understands if the conversation stays on Joe Biden's age and Joe Biden's memory, Donald Trump understands at the end of the day he loses. Because that whole strongman act that this failed reality host puts on every day, that strongman act, it collapses when you look at the guy stumbling on stage. He can't even remember who the president of the United States is, can't even remember who the Speaker of the House is, gets dates confused. Jon Stewart. Watch Jon Stewart. This is from last night. Jon Stewart's debut on The Daily Show this second time around. This is why Donald Trump doesn't want you or me talking about president's memories.
The footage of the president unable to recall simple facts must have been brutal to watch.
James Webb.
I don't remember the names. I don't remember the name. I don't remember ever buying something for myself.
Do you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
I mean, I don't remember that. Okay, as good as my memory is, I don't remember that. But I have a good.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best memories?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry, that was the wrong footage. That's the high-functioning candidate from 9 years ago, unable to recall if he has a good memory.
By the way, speaking of supporting our allies, that foreign aid bill we've been talking about in the Senate just passed by a vote of 70 to 29, Jackie Alemany. So it does clear the Senate about $95 billion between Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, humanitarian aid to Gaza as well. It is through the Senate. The threshold, of course, was 60. They got to 70 votes there. But now it moves to the House, where, as we said earlier, Jackie, Speaker Mike Johnson says, forget about it unless we do more about the border, which the Senate just did last week.
Yeah, Willie, it's unclear when the House is exactly going to bring this up or whether they'll bring it up at all. As House Speaker Mike Johnson said in a statement yesterday, he does not want this to make the floor, and he realizes that his job is on the line if he does bring it up. People like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and other parts, the faction of the America First wing of the party that makes up a significantly larger portion of the House GOP conference in the House than it does in the Senate, has threatened to initiate a motion to vacate yet again, repeating this cycle that we already saw with former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. But there are a few other options that are being debated at the moment, and actually some senators were talking to my colleagues overnight about the potential to work around Speaker Johnson, help him keep his job, and work with Democrats to have Democrats have a discharge petition, which would require 4 signatures from Republicans who were supportive of this funding in order to introduce it and get it onto the floor. Ultimately, that would require 218 votes. Unclear whether or not those votes exist, as we also know that there are a handful of Democrats who are opposed to this funding. You had people like Senator Welch, Bernie Sanders, and one other Democrat in the Senate who ultimately joined with the 29 to vote against this package in the Senate. And that number might be a bit bigger in the House with some of these anti-Israel far-left Democrats. So we'll see what happens. There are a number of options, and it could go any which way with a House this divided.
All right. The Washington Post, Jackie Alemany, thank you so much. And, of course, we're going to also be following the possible impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas later today. Again, as Jackie said, now that it's passed the Senate in overwhelming manner, now it goes to the House, and there is something called the discharge petition. 4 Republicans sign it, and believe me, there are 4 Republicans who want to get aid to Ukraine and Israel. And then that's a discharge petition, puts it on the floor, and then you have the vote on the floor, and that's something that Johnson can do nothing to stop. And so there is that possibility for it to pass.
We begin this hour on Capitol Hill, where the Senate just voted to pass a $95 billion foreign aid bill that includes support for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The standalone bill comes after Republicans in the upper chamber tanked a linked border security and foreign aid package last week. The bill now heads to the House, where it faces an uncertain future, to be generous. Speaker Mike Johnson says Congress needs to focus on border security before foreign aid. They already did that, but we'll put that to the side for a moment. Here's what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said about the passage of this morning's bill just moments ago.
Today, we make Vladimir Putin regret the day he questioned America's resolve. And we make clear to others, like China's President Xi, not to test our determination. And we send a clear bipartisan message of resolve to our allies in NATO. With the strong bipartisan support we have here in the Senate with this vote, I believe that if Speaker Johnson brought this bill to the House floor, it will pass with the same strong bipartisan support.
All right, Joe, so 70 votes is a sizable chunk of the United States Senate passing this foreign aid bill, $95 billion, Ukraine, Israel. There'll be Gaza humanitarian assistance and, of course, Taiwan and other partners in the Pacific. So what we've heard from some of the senators is that they want border security before they want to help foreign countries. They just participated in a process in the United States Senate where Republican Senator James Lankford gave them just that. And now the House says it will not pass, at least Speaker Johnson does, it will not pass this bill that just passed this morning in the Senate because he wants border security addressed, which the Senate just did last week.
Right. Well, it's mind-boggling. You have in the United States Senate one of the most conservative senators, James Lankford, pass the toughest border security bill, or put together a bipartisan plan to pass the toughest border security bill in well over a generation, a tougher bill than Republicans could ever dream of getting in the future. And Republican senators said no because Donald Trump told them to say no. You have the Senate passing overwhelmingly a bill to rescue Ukraine from Russian foreign invaders. Lindsey Graham votes no because Donald Trump tells him to vote no. I could go down the list of Republicans. It's not even worth it. We heard Roger Marshall doing his best Tommy Tuberville imitation, saying, European allies should just get over it, when Donald Trump said that he's going to allow an invasion of their country by Vladimir Putin, that he's going to encourage it. This is the same Donald Trump, remember. Again, these dots all connect. This is the same Donald Trump who, of course, said after the invasion that Vladimir Putin was brilliant and that the invasion was brilliant, that he's a very smart man. So you have all of this going on, but this is where we find ourselves now. And yes, I became a Republican, I think when I was 20, 21, 22. I forget the year I became a Republican. But I became a Republican and worked and fought in a Republican Party that fought, I can only speak for myself, for balanced budgets. We balanced the budget 4 years in a row for the first time since the 1920s, only time in 100 years that's happened. Now you have Donald Trump Republicans who spent more money and raised deficit and debt more than anybody else. We not only fought to balance a budget and balance a budget 4 years in a row, we also fought hard to push back on communist aggression, whether that communist aggression was coming from China, whether that communist aggression was coming from North Korea, whether that aggression was coming from Russia, which wasn't as much of a problem back then. I flew 19 hours to send a message, along with other Republicans, to China to see the first democratically elected president of Taiwan. I flew 19 hours to Taiwan. I stayed in Taiwan for about, I think, 10 hours, and then I flew 19 hours back because I was on the Armed Services Committee, and I wanted to send a strong message along with other members of the Armed Services Committee together, collectively, to send a message to communist China. Keep your hands off of Taiwan. We're here. We're going to do what it takes to defend democracy in Taiwan. Mara Gay, this morning, that party's gone. You have a party now that is encouraging the invasion of Europe. A party right now whose senators are saying Europe should just get over it. A party right now who's pulling up stakes and being every bit as isolationist as Charles Lindbergh. I wouldn't even put them in the same category as Neville Chamberlain, because Neville Chamberlain was an honorable man. He was just wrong about appeasing Hitler. No, these people are cheering for Vladimir Putin. And as David Frum just tweeted a couple of minutes ago, because I'm old and I have a bad memory, Putin's last hope is Speaker Mike Johnson. Think about that, Maura. Vladimir Putin's last hope, this war criminal in Russia, his last hope is the Republican Speaker of the House. I mean, I know you don't have to love the Republican Party or ever have loved the Republican Party in the past to say, well, they're kind of less dangerous when they pushed back on communist thugs and balanced budgets. That time is long gone.
Well, it's amazing because, I am old enough to remember when John McCain was the Republican nominee, who was of course, war hero and was a patriot. And so the fall has been rapid, the decline of the party. But I actually think that Vladimir Putin's last hope is seeing Donald Trump in office again. And as horrific as it has been to see Ukraine having to fight for its life, essentially, to see the horror and the war since October 7th and on October 7th in Israel and in Gaza, and the suffering is just unimaginable. It's also incredible to me that we aren't hearing more on the campaign trail about what all of this could look like if Donald Trump were actually in the White House right now. It's very clear that it would be unimaginably worse. I mean, Donald Trump is somebody who has open admiration for dictators, including Vladimir Putin. And he's also somebody who is very supportive of Bibi Netanyahu, who I think is not our friend in this instance. Israel is not so sure about Bibi Netanyahu. So I wonder, too, just when you talk to voters, because I've been out in the trail talking to voters, you hear a lot about anger toward the U.S. policy in Israel and Gaza. And some of it is understandable. But there's not a lot of discussion of what this might look like if Donald Trump returns to the White House. Do we think that he's going to show our friends more compassion or solidarity? Do we think that he's going to care about Palestinian children? I'm going to say that's a no.
And what we've seen in the last 2 days as a reminder that Republicans will go right along with it. Jonathan Lemire, President Zelensky of Ukraine just out with a statement as the 70-29 vote, this aid made its way through the Senate. He said he's grateful to Senator Schumer and to Leader McConnell and to every United States senator supporting continued assistance to Ukraine as we fight for freedom, democracy, and the values we all hold dear. He reiterates that it is American assistance that's helping them, that's keeping them alive in this fight, as he calls it, to fight Russian terror. It means that life will continue in our cities and will triumph over war. American assistance brings just peace in Ukraine closer and restores global stability. He goes on thanking America again and making the point perhaps to those sitting in the House of Representatives about how critical and how crucial this aid is, not just to Ukraine's survival, but for the stability of the West.
There have been questions about Joe Biden, and questions arose especially after the release of Robert Hur's report on President Biden's handling of classified documents and its amplified scrutiny about the president's age. In a new exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris for the Wall Street Journal 2 days before the Her report came out, Harris says she is, quote, ready to serve. The Journal writes, quote, there's no question about that. Harris responded bluntly. Everyone who sees her on the job, Harris said, walks away fully aware of my capacity to lead. Let's bring in right now reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Tarini Parti, who conducted the interview. Thanks so much for being with us. What was your takeaway with all the time you spent with the vice president?
Thanks for having me. So the vice president was pretty clear that she is ready to serve. And of course, this question normally doesn't come up as much for vice presidents, but this is something she is having to face because she is vice president to the oldest president. And now with this Her report, this is going to keep coming up for her as Republicans try to make this an issue on the campaign trail. The other thing that was interesting from my interview with her is I spent a lot of time talking to her about abortion and the way she's talking about abortion rights. This is an issue that a rare issue that Democrats have an advantage on that we've seen in polls. And the way she's talking about it is especially interesting because she's not really holding back. She's getting into pretty explicit details in a way we don't usually see elected officials do. And she said part of that is trying to get people to feel some empathy and to see what is actually going on in these states. And she's using that sort of former prosecutor background. She's worked on sexual assault cases to really get her message out. So, I asked her if she feels like she needs to convince voters she's ready, and she really, shut that down and said she feels ready. She thinks voters can see that while she's on the campaign trail on this big issue of abortion rights.
Tarini, Mara Gay here with the New York Times. Wondering, the vice president has been out on the trail a lot lately. Do you expect that you're going to see a different role for her if Joe Biden does win re-election? Is she doing anything special behind the scenes, too, that maybe the public isn't aware of to prepare in the eventuality that she would have to step up, God forbid?
We have seen her take on more of a national security type portfolio. She has been involved in, in advising the president on the war in the Middle East. She's been on calls with Benjamin Netanyahu. She has been pushing the administration to adopt sort of a more empathetic posture towards Palestinians and to focus more on a post-war Gaza plan. We know she's talking about that more. She gave that big speech in Dubai a few weeks ago. So she's taking on more sort of a national security portfolio. She's also now leading the White House Office on Gun Violence Prevention. So they are trying to give her more visibility as these questions about the president's age keep coming up. And of course, now with this special counsel report are going to become an even bigger campaign issue.
Tarini, as we've been talking about questions about how much or how little we'll see Joe Biden himself on the campaign trail, given all these questions about his performance and age and all of that from some people, do you get the sense from Vice President Harris herself or from people around her from the campaign that we're going to be seeing much more of her, perhaps in places that the president won't be?
I definitely think so. She told me she plans on being everywhere. She said she rested up in December because she knew she was going to be on the road constantly between now and November. And we've seen her do a lot of that. She has been traveling a lot. I was with her in Georgia and in Wisconsin. Right now, she's focusing more on abortion rights. And like I said, that is an issue that one of the few issues that can energize Democrats right now. But she's also talking about, of course, gun violence prevention and, other issues that Democrats can get excited about, especially voters who are more progressive, minority voters, younger voters. These are the types of demographics that the White House feels she can especially appeal to in a way that maybe the president can't.
All right, national politics reporter at the Wall Street Journal, Tarini Parti, bringing us her interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. Tarini, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember.
That was Donald Trump back on the 2016 campaign trail mocking a disabled New York Times reporter. That moment was one of many 9 years ago that left Iraq war veteran Brent Cummings questioning the direction of a country he put his life on the line to protect. Joining us now, National Enterprise Editor at the Washington Post, David Finkel. He's author of a new book titled An American Dreamer, Life in a Divided Country, which follows Brent Cummings' journey since returning from the Middle East. David, so good for you to have you here with us. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Tell us about Brent. He's someone who you've been following for quite some time. And in particular, these years, this book covers the years of 2016 to 2020, in particular, the Trump years. Tell us how that impacted Brent.
Well, if you look at the book title, the subtitle, let me start with that, is Life in a Divided Country. And that's no surprise to any of us. It's life has been feeling like you're living in the middle of a fire alarm for 8 years now. And I wanted to write a book about what that feels like, not for politicians who in many ways are pulling the fire alarm, not for extremists who might scale the walls of the Capitol building and suddenly become insurrectionists. But I wanted to write a book about the rest of us. And Brent was the guy I settled on. I met him in 2007 in Iraq. We spent a year living next to each other when his combat battalion was over there in the surge. And I watched this guy and I got to know him. And when it was time to write a book about someone trying to deal with what the country is becoming, almost a moral reckoning, I had seen the way this guy behaved, and he was such a natural character to write about, because what happened to Brent is as he watches the country these days, there's a very strong sense that he survived one war only to find himself on the edge of another one. So he was my guy.
So that clip where we had Trump mocking that disabled reporter, that's just one of many. Of course, that came a few months after he mocked John McCain, saying he preferred war heroes who hadn't been captured. Talk to us about the toll that moments like that, the degradation of the office, the degradation of someone seeking the presidency took on someone like Brent, who had obviously risked his life for his country overseas.
Well, I want to be careful. Look, first of all, it's not an anti-Trump book or a pro-Trump book or anti-Biden or pro-Biden. Those books are out there. This is about the slow, corrosive effect on a guy who I think if Brent were here, he would describe himself this way. He's a little more Republican than Democrat. He's a little more conservative than liberal. He's this man in the middle. And that makes him an appealing character to me, because what was bothering him, it's not Trump's policies as much as Trump's behavior, the vulgarisms, the lies. And Brent was brought up in a certain way to believe that if you act decently, if you're a moral person, you have a chance at a pretty good life. Good things happen to you. And at the same time Trump was being elected, Brent's father, so important to the way the man he turned out to be, Brent's father was dying of cancer. And Brent was watching this as Trump was going up and his father was going down. Brent had been taught, if you live a good life, you're going to succeed. And here his father was dying, and this guy who Brent doesn't really like very much was ascending to the highest office in the land. And Brent was thinking, what's going on here? I was taught that bad people fail, and he's not failing.
So Brent's country, David, is his front porch, his pickup truck, driving on a Saturday morning to a gun range to shoot decoys, and he does very well at it. He goes back to his front porch in a country that's changing around him. He wore the uniform of the country, fought for the country. Where is he today, mentally?
Well, he's still trying to figure out what the country is becoming, as are we all. It's so fraught and it's so loud, and I think his porch offers him a little bit of respite from all the noise going on, where he can try to slowly make some sense of what his country is becoming. I don't want to keep harping on this, but that was a tough deployment he was in. Yeah. The whole unit, it was difficult.
High casualty rate.
And he against that, this is a guy who acted so decently. A quick example, and sorry to talk about something so long ago, but it matters. There was a day, for instance, when an Iraqi national who was serving as an interpreter in the unit went off the fob, went back into Baghdad to see his family, and suddenly he's on the phone, he's calling Brent, he's panicked. He doesn't know what to do because there was a huge truck bomb that blew up outside of his apartment building, wrecked the building. And this guy, this wonderful guy named Izzy, was outside on the street, daughter in his arms. She was bleeding. He didn't know what to do. He had nowhere to take her. And he was asking Brent, what do I do? What do I do? And Brent, this girl had no standing on an American military base, but Brent figured out a way to get Izzy out of that part of Baghdad into the eastern edge where this fob was. He worked the phone so that when the guy got there with his daughter, he could come inside. And he ran out to meet Izzy, sun setting, everything was about to be locked down, brings Izzy in, gets him to the medical area, and he's just sitting there with Brent and Izzy are sitting there outside while inside they're just pulling this huge piece of glass out of her head and saving her life. And Izzy is saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Brent is just, he said, I haven't felt this good since I got to this hellhole. So and that behavior is what has guided him through the 4-year period I followed him from 2016 through 2020 when he was trying to make sense of what to do. Now, Brent lives next door, for instance, to a guy named Michael. And they're next door neighbors. They get along. Michael, total, he's a great guy. He's a total MAGA guy, in as deep as you can get. And Brent was thinking, how do I find common guy with this ground? And earlier in Brent's life, Brent has 2 daughters. The second one was born with Down syndrome. The day she was born, he was saying to his father, what do I do? And his father said, you're going to love her. And Brent has loved her. And he's trying to bring that same thinking into his other relationships, for instance, with his neighbor, Michael.
David, just looking at Brent's experience and the community that he lives in, do you see a way out of Trumpism in his experience?
Well, I think he is learning how you get along with it. There are other things going on in Brent's life, and also Michael, the neighbor's life. Michael fell out of a tree 20 years ago, and he's a functioning quadriplegic. He wherever he goes, he has a gun on his ankle. He has another gun in his wheelchair. When Hillary Clinton won, for instance, he was terrified because he thought he was going to lose his guns and the ability to protect himself. So here's Michael navigating his life, Brent with all the other things going on in his life. So it's not just politics at the center, but there is that division between them. And there was a day, in fact, when they got into it a little bit. And they both realized if they kept going, this is going to cross the line. They both pulled back, and they've continued as close neighbors and friends to some extent. Now, the question becomes, is that willful ignorance, or is there a lesson in there in how we all get along?
The powerful and important new book titled An American Dreamer, Life in a Divided Country by David Finkel. David, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.